All right, folks, welcome back to another exciting edition of Some Time with Zulu. I'm going to start a little timer here because we're going to try to keep this video under 10 minutes. I'm going to put a 5-minute marker in place on this so that we can try to keep these videos efficient. So long story short, a client sent in a record to us to mix to let us demonstrate Zulu on in a multi-track fashion. It's a hip hop record. It involves a bunch of really cool drum sounds, keys, guitar, and vocals, and bass, of course. But we're going to focus on drums today, so we're going to try to divide this video into segments. So we're going to just jump right into the drums. So get to the section where like the right before the shakers come in and give it a whirl. So we're running through Zulu on the mix bus right now. So everything you hear is going to be through Zulu in terms of the music. So here we go. All right, so that's the drums, right? So if we just skip to the first track here, we have a shaker track. The shaker track was printed through Zulu in MX mode, deck set to pro, bias set to positive, enhance on 0, and headroom was set to pro. So basically like an MPEX 456 kind of thing. One thing to pay attention to that was really cool is this is a track that I added to the record with the client's permission because I felt it needed something else in addition to the hi-hat. So the shakers added a dimension since this was kind of influenced by a 70s record that was a little bit absent on the record. And so I suggested this to the client and they graciously said yes, which was cool. I took that Kabasa sample, did some cool programming with it, boosted a bunch of treble and a bunch of upper mids to Zulu and saturation with it. So did like plus 12 on the high shelf. Had another band set to 6.8K basically and doing 8 dB boost. Another boost around 900 to give it some meat. Didn't really touch the low end over here, but on the low shelf I did a big boost to like 7 dB. And a bunch of like tube internal electronic stuff. In the saturator it was doing like some nominal stuff. And just for a quick AB, just by comparison, without reinsert, the sample sounded like this. So if I could just get this thing to behave, giant mouse pad. Already the shaker's really loud by comparison for a lot of reasons. I mean, it's not mixed in as well, but you get the idea. The shaker's pretty much like a lot of white noise with the EQ settings. If I take this stuff out, so you can hear more of the beads in the shaker, but then it got a little harsh. And so what I wanted was to kind of eliminate some of that. So what I did was when I printed it to Zulu, I was coming in kind of hot. But the idea was to use Zulu to soften some things. So even though I'm not pegging it based on these faders, it was pretty loud coming out of here. So I attenuated a little bit and boosted the return. And so that's why you get this result, which if you pay attention, if I give it a little bit more juice and volume, you'll hear you'll hear the difference there. So it's softer, basically, and it sounds more like a shaker now. It's got more of that Latin Afro-Caribbean feel to it, I feel. Like you can hear the beans more, which was the idea. So that's our shaker. Here's the claps, right? They're offset and staggered, and it's meant to kind of have an offset little tilty stereo thing going on, but they're soft. And again, that was like a big deal for me is I wanted a soft sounding clap. So when you combine that with the rim, which was also printed in a similar fashion, but it was set to TK mode, so it was more of a cassette tape kind of thing than a MPEX 456. When you combine that with the rim, you get this sound, which is really cool, right? Like that's, yeah, I'm digging that. You know, that's got like kind of like a 90s feel to it. It's soft. take away the claps real quick, and you get just that snare. The original snare itself wasn't as soft as this, though, right? If I put this back in, and I turn this this snare sample back on. Okay, so there's my 5-minute mark. So there's the original snare with the RIA insert bypassed, right? And I got a heavy gate. Got a lot of EQ. Look at that. Treble. Upper mid-range, 3.5K. Got a narrow boost at 1.5K on snare, which actually sounds good. And I got a big cut at 110, right? And then that was going into Zulu, into Tesla, which was saturating it, and then into Thrill Seeker, which is another variety of sound plugin. And you can see that the the gain reduction was really happening there, which is, a nice touch, right? But it was just a little, it's much, right? It's mad much, right? Plus this snare had a little bit of noise on it, but the gate was bringing something out of it that I really dug, The gate was set to no attack. It brings a pop out of stuff. You should try it sometime if you haven't. So again, by contrast, when I had a snare, after I ran it to Zulu, a lot of that upper mid-range energy that was kind of like crummy, even though I was trying to get some of it out, what I was doing is boosting against what Zulu was going to do to it. And that can really help your sounds when you want to brighten them up, but you don't want them to be nasty. And it just made it really fat and thick, The hi-hats I didn't touch. I kind of really stuck to my guns on trying to do, only what was necessary for the drums on this record. I didn't want to go crazy. So, again, here's the full drum sound. Right? Right? We can skip right to the... It just has like a full presence to it, which is kind of what this record needed, right? And mind you, again, this is not a knock on the original sounds. It's just that this record was supposed to have more of a vintage vibe to it. So by softening those sounds, by thickening them, right? Just here's a great example of what Zulu does to transient information. So like if you just look at the shaker, right, really quickly, look at the shape of the shaker sample before we wrap, right? And then look at the printed sample of the shaker through Zulu. Look at that. Like, notice how the shape has changed. See that? This softening effect is part of that magical hysteresis phenomenon that occurs when signal gets printed on the tape and then played back off the heads. With the heads and off the heads. That rounding really makes a nice kind of thing happen that you just don't see with digital plugins. Like, we've tried a lot of tape plugins and they don't do this part very well because it's a very fast process. So, and the same thing is true for the rim. If you look at the rim sample versus the printed Zulu sample, let me see if we can pull them together. Just really quickly, look at the differences, right? Same thing with the kick. How could we forget the kick? If you look at the kick drum after Zulu, look at that, right? There's like this huge thing going on with the transient information and the thickening of it. But the original kick, even though it seems a little even, it was kind of lacking in frequency content and it had like a clippy thing. And so what I kind of did is skew the clippiness of the kick drum while bringing out the harmonics elsewhere. If you look at that, you see that? I was playing with the sustain. Once you start playing with level in Zulu, you'll notice that the tail of your sounds changes quite a bit along with the middle of the transfer of the waveform. Like the mid-range and the duration of the samples or the sounds is where that harmonic content really kind of brings things together where it just sounds more real. You know, it gives things more of an intelligibility. That's what Todd says all the times. It makes things sound more like what you're supposed to be hearing in your head. And you know, just like for example, really quickly before we go, if I haven't said that enough times already, here is the dry kick with the effects Sans Zulu. So there's the dry kick. Right? Now here's the same kick drum with no effects, well, except for the oops, is that the right kick? Is that the right is that the right track there? Come on, pull it up, baby. All right, so we're gonna turn all this stuff off because that's already printed in the sample, and turn this back on, and we're gonna mute the wave, and then this is the kick drum. Also with the parallel bus, it's kind of bringing out some pop in the upper mids. Right, it's just got like that butter. There's like some, it's like some bass butter happening on that kick now, right? Isn't that cool? Well, I hope you've enjoyed this little examination of the drum mix on this record. That concludes this part of the series, and we hope you tune in for the next part, which will focus on the instruments. And then the following part after that will focus on the vocals. And then the final video will be the full mix. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate your support, and we look forward to seeing you again next time. Take care and bye.